Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and in this video tutorial, we are going to be working on drawing this figure that looks like an A. So you can draw this several different ways. You can see in my example picture, I started with my origin down here in the bottom left, and I actually used construction lines. That's what these light, thin dotted lines are, to draw a box, and that kind of confined my A into being inside of that. So you can use those construction lines if you'd like. I'm going to actually do this drawing without those construction lines because I think a lot of students pick up pretty easily how to use construction lines. So I'm going to draw it without just so you can see how you would do it without. Okay, so I'm going to pull this to my other screen. And in SolidWorks, I'm going to open a new part file. You can either go up to File, New, and hit Part. Okay. Or you can hit that piece of paper up at the top and hit New Part. It's the same thing. Okay, the first thing you want to do on any activity is always inspect what units this is in. So on the left side of all of my activities, I highlight what units they're in. Mainly we will be using IPS, but you do see in some of these other examples, we do use things like MMGS, which is drawing in millimeters. So it's very important that you always check what units you are in first. Okay? In order to change your units, once you open a part file in SolidWorks, the bottom right-hand corner down here is going to say something like custom or IPS or MMGS, but by selecting that, that is how you can change what units you want to be in. So you can see that I just drew something else that was in some custom units. So I do need to change it over to IPS, which is inches, pounds, and seconds. Okay, once you have your units changed, you can go up to the Sketch tab up at the top, and you're going to select the Sketch button. Notice it brings up my different planes, my front plane, my top plane, my right side plane. For a lot of activities that are ones at the beginning of the class, we'll be just using the front plane. So the front plane is your simple Y and X. Okay, you can kind of see that down here. You have your different axes or axes. So your X is going left and right, that's this way. Your Y, as you can see, is going up and down, that's this. And your Z is forward and backwards. A lot of students are used to the X and Y plane, which in this case is our front plane, because that's what you work with in math class all of the time. So I am going to select the front plane. And you notice it rotates around, and now we are looking at it a flat view. So this right here is my 0, 0. So you got to imagine that this is on a massive grid here. And this is my Y going up and down. So in this area, this is positive Y. Down here is negative Y. Over here is positive X. Over here is negative X. So this is like a massive grid. Okay, and this is our 0, 0 point. So I'm going to start out by going up to the top and get the line tool. I'm going to click on my origin. Notice you don't have to click and hold, you just click, and then you can move your mouse around. So I'll move it up here somewhere on an angle and click. Move my mouse over to the right. You notice it starts to project that little yellow horizontal line. So I'm going to click. Move your mouse down and click. And basically what I'm doing is just kind of drawing the outside. And I'm going to purposely mess this up a little bit so that you can kind of see what might happen to yours. Okay, but obviously you're going to try to draw your A nice and neat. You can also do that same thing for the inside. Try to draw your inside the best you possibly can. I messed mine up a little bit on purpose. Okay. Once you have your A drawn, you can go over here and hit the green check on the left side. You can also get out of the line tool simply by hitting Escape on your keyboard. So anytime you are drawing and something is not going on how you want it to, you can simply hit Escape on your keyboard. You also noticed there a minute ago I zoomed in and zoomed out. So on your mouse you have a little scroll wheel. That scroll wheel allows you to zoom in and zoom out. Okay. Now, if you press down on that scroll wheel, you notice this allows you to rotate because this is a 3D environment. So the common mistakes a lot of students make is they think they're drawing a straight line, but really they're off on an angle like this. So you always have to be mindful of how you're actually drawing. Did you rotate it? Okay. And if you did rotate, how do you get back to your normal view? Well, on your keyboard, you have the control button on the bottom left, and then you'll see you have number 1 through 8. And number 1 through 8 all allow us to rotate around. So you notice I pressed this button up here and it kind of shows different things like this is the top view. That's control 5. Front view, control 1. Left side, control 3. Right side, control 4. Back is control 2. Bottom's control 6. So you're probably lost by now. You're probably like, well, how am I supposed to remember those? Very, very easy here. I personally don't use any of these. The ones that I use are these two. Control 7 puts you on a 3D view, and Control 8 is normal 2. So you notice it says it rotates and zooms the model to the view orientation normal to the selected plane. Basically what that's saying is if you do a Control 8, it's always going to rotate you perfectly and flat to the view that you are drawing on. So if you ever start to see circles, don't draw this circle by the way, but if you ever start to see circles that look like ovals or an ellipse, that means you are on an angle. That does not mean you are drawing flat. Okay? So that was a little tangent there to help you kind of understand what you need to do with your left hand and what you can do with scrolling in and scrolling out. Okay, or zooming in and zooming out. So next, you also see it pops up a whole bunch of these little green symbols. These green symbols, if you move your mouse over it and let it sit there, it will bring up the word of what geometric relation this is. So I would look through this and say, what relations do I want there to be, and what relations did SolidWorks automatically add? So for instance, I see this is a horizontal one. That's a horizontal line, so that's good. I also want this to be a horizontal line, so that's good. This one, however, can still move. Notice I can click on this dot, hold down, and I can move around. So this line should be horizontal, but it isn't. So you can simply click on that line, and over here on the left side, SolidWorks is smart enough to try to figure out what relations could possibly be added to this line. So you want a horizontal relation. Okay, notice it changed that. If you accidentally click the wrong one, it's as simple as right-clicking on that relation and hitting delete. So any horizontal lines you have that you might not have actually drawn on horizontal, for instance, this one was on an angle, okay? Make sure they are horizontal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then you want to see if you accidentally drew anything vertical, because you don't want to have vertical lines on this. So if you see any symbols that are going straight up and down, right-click and delete them. If you see other symbols like this says parallel. Now, we are actually going to put in that parallel later, but for right now, I'm going to delete this so you have a better understanding of what really is going on. Okay? So everything's good. I only have my horizontal and I have my coincident down here. So we can see in the picture that this bottom line and this bottom line are on the exact same plane. They're straight across from one another. So in order to select both of them, I'm going to hold in Shift on the keyboard, and I'm simply going to click on the line. Okay? You'll see on the left side it has a whole bunch of relations. It also shows you what entities, meaning a line or a point, you selected. If you have other things in here other than 2 lines, that means you need to click off everything a couple times and try to do that again. So a common mistake is people have a point selected. So now that we have both these lines selected, we want to make them collinear. Co meaning to share, linear meaning line. So sharing the same line. You see it gives this little projection. Okay. Next, what we want to do is start adding some simple dimensions. So get your dimension tool, click on this bottom line and move your mouse out, click to place it, and we want to make this 0.25. This one over here is also 0.25. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see these dimensions better. And then it shows from the very bottom line, so down here, all the way up to the top, this top line is a total of 1.5. And I'm just hitting enter on my keyboard. You can also hit the green check to accept these dimensions. Okay. Then it shows up here that there is a measurement of 0.25, as you can kind of see. That's a horizontal dimension from this point to this point. So there are multiple different ways that you could do this. I think the easiest way is selecting that angled line, but moving your mouse straight up. So make sure it's not on an angle like this. That's called an align dimension. You want straight up, and that is going to be 0.25. You can do that same thing over here. Move straight up. That's also 0.25. Then at the very bottom of this thing, so from our origin, which you're going to have to click on that dot, to the bottom right-hand dot, so the furthest width distance across this thing is 1 inch. Now, you see that kind of messed up my A. That's okay. I'm going to hit the green check, and all I'm going to do is click and hold on the dot with no tool selected, and I'm just going to rearrange this stuff. I'm going to make sure this looks good. Get it kind of back into shape. So you can see that all of my lines here are starting to change color as I add dimensions and add relations. So when something is black, that means it is fully defined or locked in place, okay? And it turns black by having the dimension and relations added. It needs to know how far away from the origin it is. So these blue lines right now, you can see the bottom of it's black, but it's still blue up here because it is not locked in place. So what we need to do is figure out what relations this inside needs. So first off, this line and this line here, so I'm holding in shift, those are parallel. So I'll make those parallel. Same thing on the opposite side. This one and this one are parallel. Okay, and as you can imagine, this line and the outside are also parallel. So you notice I'm using these little relations up here. You can use either one. Sometimes that pops up for you. I like to use those instead of the ones all the way over here on the left, but it's the same thing. So this is also parallel. So make sure you're holding in the shift key when you do this. Okay, so now you can see that these are parallel. They're always going to go on the same angle as the outside, but I can still move this left and right. So what we also need to do is make this side of the inside hole and this same side of cut out at the bottom collinear. So I selected both of those, made them collinear. So I'm going to do that again on the left side, collinear, and now I can start adding dimensions. And you notice those turn black. So dimensions. Let's start at the top of this. So from here to here is a 1/2 inch, 0.5. From there to here is 0.25. And from the bottom all the way down to the bottom is also 0.5. So you can see everything turn black. It says the words fully defined down here. If you got any yellow warnings or anything like that, you have multiple options. You can either hit Control-Z to undo. You can right-click and delete one of those relations, or there's an undo button up here. Okay, but since mine's fully defined, I'm going to hit the green check. I'm going to switch my tab to the Features tab and select Extruded Boss Base. And you notice we go to a 3D angle here, and we're trying to add thickness. So the material thickness on the document says 0.5, and it shows a -Z. My activity back up, that -Z is over here on the left. So that means we are going to extrude this backwards. So see the arrows coming forward? We want to hit this reverse button over here on the left, and that's going to send it backwards. Then we hit the green check, change your material to plain carbon steel, you have the proper material selected, you can switch over to the Evaluate tab, select the mass properties. This window will pop up, and here you can inspect the mass and the center of mass. So the mass that we wanted, if you are looking back at your activity, was a mass of 0.12 pounds. And that's exactly what we got. Has a center of mass of X value being 0.5, yep. Y value being 0.75, yep. And the Z being negative 0.25. And that's what we got. So now that we're all finished, we can close out of the mass properties, go up to File, Save As, save this as whatever assignment number it is. You can close out, you can move on to the next activity. If you do not have that mass, to edit your sketch or your boss extrude here, you can right click and you see these two little buttons. One says Edit Feature, that's your extrusion. One says Edit Sketch. You can go back in and actually edit the sketch as well. So continue to problem solve until you have the correct mass. Good luck.